Namaste and good morning to all of you. Um, we're going to start with the Gita Dhyanam verses, and then Urmil Chawla ji will recite first 20 verses of this chapter 3, Karam Yog. Om Parthaye Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayan Swayam Vyasen Gratitam Puran Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Ritvarshine Bhagavate Mashtadashadhyayane Am Tvam Anusandhami Bhagavat Gite Bhavdveshine Namo Astute Vyas Vishal Buddhe Full Arvind Ayat Patra Netar Yena Tavya Bharat Tail Purnaha Prajwalito Gyanmaya Pradeepaha प्रपन्न पारी जाताय तोत्र वेत्र एक पानये ज्ञान मुद्राए कृष्णाय गीता अमृत दुहे नमः सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोगधा गोपाल नंदना पार्थो वत्सा सुधीर भोगता दुग्धम गीता अमृतम महता वसुदेव सुतम देवम कंस चानूर मर्दनम देवकी परमानंदम कृष्णम वंदे जगतगुरुम भीष्म द्रोण तटा जयद्रथ चला गांधार नीलोत्पला शल्य ग्राहवती कृपेन वाहने कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थाम विकर्ण घोरमकरा दुर्योधन अवर्तने सोतीर्णा खलु पांडवे रन्नदी कवर्तका केशवा पाराशरे वत्सरोजमलम गीता अर्थगंधोटकम नाना ख्यानक केसरम हरि कथा संबोधन अबोधितम लोके सज्जन षटपदय रह पेपिये मानम मुदा तु याद भारत पंकजम कलिमल प्रध्वंसी न श्रेयस मूकम करोति वाचालम पंगुम लंघ्यते गिर यत्कृपात्मं वंदे परमानंद माधवम यम ब्रह्म वरुण इंद्र रुद्र मरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्ये स्तवे वेदै सांग पद क्रम उपनिषदै गायन्ति यम सामगा ध्यानवस्थे तद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यम योगिनो यस्यन्तं न विदुषुर असुर न गना देवाय तस्मै नमः. I would request Urmil ji to recite that poetry, which is a creation of Urmil, please unmute yourself. Rita, she looks like Rita, she cannot unmute her.
Unmute कर दिया. Okay.
You're on now. Thank you.
The Karam Yog, it is the path of action and selfless service. Arjun reflected on transcendental knowledge. Then he asked Lord Krishna, if you believe that Gyan Yog, self-knowledge, is superior to Karam Yog, which is selfless action, then, oh Janardhana, then why are you advising me to wage this terrible war? That is my question. Your suggestions seem vague and contradictory. My intellect is confused and led astray. Who should I be, a scholar or a warrior, to attain the highest, which is that one sure way? Lord Krishna explained to Arjuna the two paths for spiritual development. O sinless one, as I said before, both the paths lead to enlightenment and self-realization. The path of knowledge is for the analytics and the path of work for those who like action. O Arjuna, just by refraining from work, one is not freed from the bondage of karmic reactions. Nor does one reach perfection in knowledge by physical renunciation and evading all actions. Not even for a moment can one exist without action. Basic duties are always in the picture. Indeed, everyone is bound to act based on the three gunas, the modes of material nature. Ascetics who control the external organs of action but keep thinking of worldly ecstasies, they deceive themselves and fail to truly renunciate. They are like hypocrites and phonies. There is a higher value in having a controlled mind attached to God and working selflessly. He is a true Karam Yogi who has no attachment to the fruits of action and works altruistically. Do your prescribed Vedic duties earnestly, since it is better to work than to be inactive and idle. For elevation and purification of the body, mind, and intellect, do your Vedic duties ever so vital. Do all obligatory duties also as a sacrifice to God, yagna, and be free of bondage to the world. Hence, O son of Kunti, do every action for the pleasure of God and be not attached to the result. Lord Krishna emphasized that serving each other is our duty towards God's creation, and it is interrelated mechanism. At the onset of creation, Brahma created living beings and assigned them some duties. Brahma said, prosper by performing yagnas, as these sacrifices shall fulfill all your wishes. Your selfless service to humanity satisfies the celestial gods, and in return, they nurture you. By making sacrifices and fostering the Creator's system, prosperity for living beings will ensue. Pleased with your selfless service to God, the celestial gods will grant you all essential needs. But those who enjoy the boon of nature without sharing or making offerings are like thieves. The saintly person who eats food served first to God in sacrifice is from all sins freed. But one who cooks food for his pleasure without first offering it to God eats sins indeed. In the integral system, all beings need food, and food production needs rain to sprout grains. Rain comes from doing sacrifices and prescribed actions. Gods then nurture the food chains. In the eternal Vedas, the essential duties of human beings are written by the Supreme Being. Hence, the all-pervading God is always present in the yagna, the act of sacrifice and offering. As per the Vedas, lack of sacrifices breaks the harmonious rhythm in the wheel of action. Those ignoring sacrifices and living only for the enjoyment of the senses live in pretension. The enlightened soul, in contrast, unites with the Supreme Being, experiencing bliss within. A God-realized soul experiences complete satisfaction, contentment, and rejoices in Him. By doing or renouncing his duties, the enlightened soul has nothing to gain or lose anymore. All his actions are in service of God, and so he need not knock for his needs on anyone's door. Therefore, perform your prescribed duties selflessly and with no attachment to its upshot. Working without expecting any fruits, one attains the primary goal of life, union with God. Lord Krishna advised Arjuna not to renounce his duties but perform them selflessly for various reasons. And so here we say the 20th verse, history tells us that through selfless service, King Janak and the wise men attained perfection. Oh Arjun, it would be best to do selfless work to set an example for the good of every nation. And so now on, he talks about why we should do selfless service, and Harji will take over. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Urmil. Beautiful. Beautiful. As we can see that the whole chapter is about Karam Yog. That is the title of the chapter too.
Yes.
So we ended our last week's class with verse number 26, where Lord Krishna is telling these Karam Yogis that let no wise man, because Karam Yogi is a wise person, let no wise man unsettle the minds of the ignorant people who are attached to actions. He should engage them in all actions, himself fulfilling them with devotion. So that's why Karam Yoga truly is doing your duties without getting attached to the actions or the results, and remembering God also at the same time. That's the devotion. So in other words, the greater you are, the higher you climb, the greater responsibilities you have. Because common people, the people who have not reached to that height yet, will follow you. And that's what Lord Krishna is telling Arjun. You're a leader. You're a prince. And you got to do your duties properly because others will follow you. You got to become an exemplary. That is the responsibility. And now let's start the class with verse number 27. In this verse, he is telling us in what way an ignorant person is attached to action. Because we got to know that also. Sometimes it's a slippery ground. In certain areas, we can act as a Karam Yogi. In other areas, we forget that. So we got to see that what really makes us slip. Prakrite kriye manani, gune karmani sarvasha, ahankar vimud atma, karta aham iti manyate. Prakrite, that is a material nature, the Prakriti. Kriye manani are performed. Gune, by the qualities. These qualities are Satvikta, Rajsikta, Tamsikta. Karmani, actions. Sarvasha, in all cases. Ahankar Vimudatma. Ahankar is egoism and Vimudatma is deluded. So a person whose mind is deluded by egoism. Karta, doer. Aham, I. Iti means thus. Manyate, thinks. So he says all actions are performed in all cases merely by the qualities in the nature. He whose mind is deluded by egoism thinks, I am the doer. Okay. So when we forget who we are, we start to identify ourselves with non-self. And that is the delusion. And that is the egoism. So we have seen all along, Lord Krishna has been insisting that do the noble action, do the right actions, do your duties, but without attachment. Sometimes it's easier said than done. Because intellect of ours accepts it, but it's not easy to remember all the time. So that's why Lord Krishna is giving us a method of discrimination by which we can easily develop the required amount of detachment. I'm not doing it. The nature is doing it. The Prakriti is doing it. And what is Prakriti? Anything other than the Atma and Paramatma is Prakriti. And I am the Atma. It's not that I'm not responsible for my actions, but arrogance should not be there. We have seen earlier, when we are ignorant about our real nature, what happens? A lot of desires erupt. Arrogant person will have a lot of desires. Ignorant person will have a lot of desires. And these desires are material desires. And those desires, they manifest at the mental level as thoughts. So a lot of desires, a lot of thoughts also. And when we have a lot of thoughts, what happens at the physical level? A lot of action. Just want to do this, want to do that, without keeping the ultimate goal in mind. And a person thinks, I am the doer. So these are called the tendencies of the mind, vasanas. They express in the outer world as actions. And when a person is the grip of ego, the soul falsely identifies itself with the body. And it remains under the illusion of doership, the Khetarpal. Sure, the noble thoughts, when we have noble thoughts, there will be noble actions. When the thoughts are agitated, the actions are also uncertain. They'll be confused. And the tamsikta, when we go even lower than that, dull thoughts, the actions will be baser, the vicious, the cruel. So that's why he used the word Prakriti over here. Prakriti has 3 colors, and according to that color of that nature, our desires will be like that, our thoughts will be corresponding to that, and our actions will be like that, and we'll think that we are the doers. So he says, be aware of this. Because wherever the mind is, the actions will be performed according to that. That's why they say the actions are generated by the mind. They are strengthened in the mind. And they are ultimately performed by the mind. When the mind is calm, body can be working hard, but still you won't feel the fatigue. So main emphasis is on the mind. So this identification with the mental condition creates the false sense of ego, which really arrogates to itself the idea that I am the doer. And whenever you think you are the doer, doer will demand the fruit also. I am the doer, I need it. I work hard, I need the fruit. And to get over this attachment, Lord Krishna is suggesting that we got to end this misconception. Okay? And what does the wise man do? See, this was the mental condition of not such a wise person, but the wise man. Tatvit tu mahabaho gun karam vibhakyo guna guneshu vartante iti matva na sajjate. Tatvavit, that is a wise person, the knower of the truth. And truth means the reality, you are. Tu means but, mahabaho, or mighty armed, is using that for Arjun. Gun karam vibhagyo, the divisions of the qualities and functions. Gun karam vibhag. Gunaha, the qualities. Guneshu, among the qualities. So that means in the form of objects. So guna word is over here in the form of senses. Guneshus is in the form of objects. Vartante, remain engaged. Iti means thus, matva, knowing. Na means not, sajjate means attached. But he who knows the truth, O mighty armed, about the divisions of the qualities and their functions. And he who knows that gunas as senses move among the gunas. So that means the senses are just working with the sense objects. Eyes are just only looking at the scene. The ears are just hearing the noise, the sounds. So he who knows that gunas as senses move among the gunas as objects is not attached. Is not attached. So as a Karam Yogi, we should not be attached. And he's telling us how a Karam Yogi is not attached. So this is like in contrast to the point of view of the ignorant man, which he explained in the previous verse. Choice is ours. Do we want to stay ignorant or do we want to become wise? So the attitude of the wise person, he is very active. He's doing all the actions. But the attachment has no place in his mind. Why? Because his constant discriminating understanding that all activities, these are all just part of this play. Sure, I got to play the part, right? That's about it, not to get attached with it. So the wise person has realized that actions belong to the world of the mind. And he is no more anxious about the fruits. Fruits will come, but he is not anxious about it. Like eating food, stomach will be full, body will be nourished, but no attachment to the food or what will happen after I eat it. No more attachment. So success and failure, because fruits are that, success and failure, they belong to the mind, not his. And I am not my mind. I am the master of this mind. Mind is the one which says that this is a failure or this is a success. I am away from it. So likes and dislikes are of the mind, not his. Love and the hatred are not his, but of the mind. This is called a complete inner freedom. That's how the God-man functions. That's how even a true sportsman in the play field functions. Because his very enjoyment is the sport, not the score. So this verse talks about the Tattvavit, the knower of the truth. So Tattvavit, this person has abolished the ego, free from the bodily identification. And a Tattvavit is able to discern the spiritual identity distinct from the physical body. Drig and Drishya, seer and the seen. Tattvavit is very clear about it. So this is what Lord Krishna is telling us. So the master hero is called Tattvavit, who knows the reality. And what is the reality? The self. Then he says in verse number 29, Prakrite gun samudaha sajante gun karmasu tan akrit san vida mandan krit san vit na vichalyet. Prakrite, the material nature. Gun samudaha, the persons deluded by the gunas. Sajante, attached. Gun karmasu, in the functions of the qualities. Tan means those, akrit san vid, the imperfect knowledge. Akrit san. See, Kritasan means a person who knows what to do, but not to do. And Akritasan means a wrong kind of a knowledge. Mandan, the ignorant, the foolish. Kritasan with, a person of perfect knowledge. Na means not, vichalyet, should unsettle. This advice was given in verse 26 also. So now we see it again in 29 also. Must be extremely important for us to remember this. He says, those deluded by the qualities of nature are attached to the functions of the qualities. The man of perfect knowledge should not unsettle the foolish who are of imperfect knowledge. So in other words, the wise should not force their thoughts onto ignorant persons by saying or repeating it that you are the soul, not the body. Because it will be meaningless for a person who does not understand. Okay, so he says, do not unsettle the mind of the person who doesn't even know, who doesn't even want to hear it. And you just want to keep talking about it. Majority of the people we see, they are in a state of delusion. And that's why majority of the people are entirely victimized by their own mental temperament also. So the minute we start to learn all this, we want to tell others. So he is just telling us again, please don't do that. Work on yourself first. Become a leader. Maybe people will be attracted to you and they will ask about it. That I see you so calm, so serene. Under any circumstance, what is your secret? Then do tell them. But do not disturb their minds. So this is a very important advice to remember. So why he repeated it again? This is the purpose of emphasis. Okay, the little twist of the words, but the same message he is giving us. Mai sarvani karmane sanyasye adhyatma chetasa nirashi nirmamaha bhutva yudhyasva vigat jwara. May means in me, sarvani all, karmani actions, sanyasya renouncing, adhyatma chetasa with the thoughts resting on God. So that means the mind centered in the God. Nirashi, free from hope. What does it mean? Free from hankering from the results of the actions. Okay, Nirashi. Nirmama, without ownership, free from egoism. Mam means mine. That is the attachment. Nirmam, no ownership. We don't own anything. We sing that in the bhajans. We recite it in the Vedic mantras. Idam namam. Nothing is mine. So this is what he's telling us. Nirashi and nirmama. Bhutva, having become. Yudhyasva, fight. Vigat jvara, free from fever. Fever over here, it means mental fever. The mind which keeps on fluctuating. That is a fever. When we have a high fever, what happens? We shiver. Over here, mental fever which keeps on fluctuating. Free from that. Mind should be steady. So he says, renouncing all actions in me. Are we supposed to just do only puja all the time? No. Whatever we are doing, we could be sweeping a floor, taking care of a child, learning, teaching, cooking, whatever we are doing. think that I'm doing it for God. We can divinize every action of ours if we just renounce all actions to God. With the mind centered on the self. So the mind which is constantly keep on thinking about the outcome, think about God only. Free from hope and egoism, the ownership. Free from mental fever. You do fight. So he's telling Arjun, fight because that's his duty to do. So he's telling us whatever we need to do, keep on doing it, but keep these conditions in your mind. Do it this way if you want to become Tattvavit or a yogi, a Karam Yogi. So this is a divine opinion of Lord Krishna. He's encouraging him to do his duty. Because Arjun in the beginning, he did say that, I don't know what you're telling me. Should I sit down and meditate, run into the forests? Or do this horrible act of fighting with my elders, my family members? So he just keeps telling him, you got to do your duty, but he's telling him how to do the duty though, as a yogi. So renouncing all actions in me. So over here again, Lord Krishna is using the first person pronoun. That means the Supreme Self. So it's not a Lord Krishna's body. It is a Supreme Self. So actions performed through attachment and desires are renounced the moment we take away from action the egocentric and the selfish stink. Every action becomes a divine action when we take the ego out. They even say that a serpent is dangerous only as long as the poison is there. Once the poison is removed, that snake's bite will not kill you. And in us, what is poisonous? The egoism, this ahankar. Adi Shankaracharya and Vivek Chudamani yesterday, this is what we are learning there too. The real wish or the poison is the arrogance in us. Actions, they give the bondage only when it is performed with selfish desires. Otherwise, actions, they don't have that power to bind us. So over here, the renunciation of action only means the giving up the wrong motives behind the actions. That's why he is using these two words, Nirashi and Nirmama. Nirashi, without hope. Hope is the expectation of a happening that is yet to manifest and mature in a future time. So it does not belong to present. It refers to the period which has not arrived yet. So that means that while you are doing the action, if your mind is constantly in the future, you are not putting all your energy into your action. So in that sense, he says Nirashi. And then without ego, the concept of ego is nothing but a bundle of happenings and achievements which took place in the past. I was such and such. That's the ego. I achieved this. People called me this. That's all ego. So ego is the shadow of the past. So where the hope is living in the future, and ego is the shadow of the past. So that's why they say if the hope is the child of the unborn future, Ego is the lingering memory of a dead past. And as a yogi, or a yoga abhyasi, we are supposed to live in the present. Live in the present. So make this span of time narrower and narrower and narrower. Live in the present. So that's what Lord Krishna is advising Arjun, to act renouncing both the hope and the ego. And this is a very primary instructions on how to pour the best in whatever we do. When we meditate, if our mind is just keep on fluctuating in the past and in the future, we are not meditating. We are supposed to just bring it into the present moment. That's why this very popular saying these days, learn to live in the present. You'll be able to deal with the situation with all your power. So the term fight again, remember, in the right way. Our individual fight is in the circumstances where we are right now. Whatever duty we need to do, that is the fight. So this advice is not just for Arjun. This is, we need to follow it fully and intelligently. So beautiful verse, often repeated by the great speakers. Renouncing all actions in God, mind centered on the self, free from hope and egoism. You understand that now? Free from mental fever. Do your duty. So he's encouraging us to do our duty properly as a yogi. As a yogi. Let's do one more. Ye me matam idam nityam anutishtanti manava shraddhavanta anusuyanta muchyante te api karma bhi. Lord Krishna is saying, ye means those who, me means my, matam teachings, idam this, nityam constantly, anutishtanti abide by, practice it, manva human beings, shraddhavanta full of faith, anusuyanta without criticizing it, not caviling it, muchyante are freed, te means they, api means also, karam bhi from actions, that means from the bondage of the karmas. Because we want to thin this web of karma on us, the bondage of the karmas, and he's teaching us how to do it. A great teacher only can teach, but we have to just follow what he's telling us. Those people who constantly practice this teaching of mine, full of faith and without criticizing, they too are freed from actions. So it is really clearly brought out that this technique, which is mentioned in the last verse, can bless us all. But only when we practice it in our life. Not just remembering it, reading it, reciting it, but we have to bring it into our life. This is what he's trying to tell us. Sure, philosophy we need to learn. To me, I think all the religions, all the faiths, they believe in this. Because this is universal. But we are fortunate to have a scripture like this written by Rishi Vyas, which is spoken by Lord Krishna, who's telling us again and again how to practice this philosophy also. So all men who follow this. So he's not saying only a particular people. All, anybody who will follow it will have a noble development. So even though this is a principle is called as Siddhanta. But he is bringing his personal opinion in this one also, because he is talking to Arjun one-on-one. So he is explaining it as a opinion. Mat is opinion. So that's why he is using matam. Ye me matam idam. An opinion is a personal view, while a principle is a universal fact. Opinions can differ among the teachers, but the principle, they are always the same. So over here, even though it is a principle, but he is bringing it down to that level where the students like us also can understand it firsthand. So he is giving us a call for action. And he is giving us what will happen, the outcome. What will be the outcome if we follow this principle? But with the Shraddha though, and without criticizing it. So because any part of our mind does not accept it, start criticizing it. So he says with a full faith. So that means that we should digest it fully, mentally, comprehend it intellectually. The full import of this advice, and then definitely practice it. And we know that it can be fully understood and experienced only by living it. Then it becomes, just like he says that my opinion, then we'll feel it, and it can be our opinion also for the generations to come. So Karam Yog, this is all about Karam Yog. You can make your own personal notes and see what is it telling us. What do we really need to follow to become a Karam Yogi? As a Karam Yogi, we got to have control over our mind, got to heighten our intellect, take responsibility for our actions, keep our mind still, and offer our actions to God. The minute we offer our actions to God, what really happens? Whenever we are doing something for God, or even when we are doing something for somebody we respect, our actions become pure. That's why when we are cooking for God, we will not put anything prohibited in there. Whenever we even take a bunch of grapes and put it in the mandir, what do? We wash it. We check it out. There's not even a single grape which is overripe. So we just, that's how when our actions are done for God, the actions become divine. So this is what he is telling us. Follow this advice. Our mental fever, and mental fever actually is what? Other scriptures they talk about over here, Lord Krishna did not mention, explained that or elaborated on the mental fever. But to me, the mental fever is lust, anger, greed, envy, illusion, etc. All those lower urges, they become pacified. And we feel connected with that higher. Our thoughts become divine. Our actions become divine. So we'll stop it here today and start with verse number 32 next week. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnase Purnamadai Purnameva Visheshyate Om Shanti 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 Om.